June's webinar in our continuing series of content solutions for the publishing industry. Today's topic is 7 ROI metrics from a publisher's unified audience data. We're going to focus on providing insight and expertise and ideas on how to help you guys make money in all the various different manners at which publishers are monetizing the data that they have from within their very diverse and growing audiences. Today, my name is Brett Kierstead. I'm Vice President of Sales for Knowledge Marketing, and I'm glad to be the host today. From a housekeeping standpoint, if you have questions along the way, please use your GoToMeeting question box, and we have a section at the end in which we'll go back and get to them. Also, today's session is being recorded, so it will be available on demand for download, as well as some additional content that we'll talk a little bit about later on today will be available as an accompaniment to today's session. So, without further ado, let's get started. So just a little bit about Knowledge Marketing. We are a technology and services provider to the publishing and media industry. We are focusing on delivering technology solutions that help improve and maximize the results that you guys deliver from how you both deliver content to your audience as well as to how you make money through your advertisers, exhibitors, etc. So we have an email marketing platform, audience database technology, forms and landing pages, circulation fulfillment, really the cornerstone technologies that make up the operations of today's leading publishing and media companies. Some of those companies you can see here, what we represent as great clients of ours, and this is where we draw a lot of the insight that you'll hear from today, the case studies and stories and successes that we've heard, as well as things we pick up in our travels along the way when we're meeting with companies that are in different stages of evaluation. So our agenda for today is pretty fast-paced to get through in today's time. We want to just give you a quick definition of what a unified audience database is, just so that we're all on the same page. We'll talk a little bit about publishing adoption, to share with you guys some insights on what we see across the industry, and then we'll dig really headfirst into the 7 specific case studies of ROI success. So let's just reset a publisher's unified audience database. But basically, a publisher's unified audience database is a centralized repository that contains all of the demographic, behavioral, and contextual information that publishers have available across all the properties that they make content and their media available. It's much more than a list of like records. It's not just we've gathered up information. We have some sort of intelligence that comes from it. It combines demographic data or profile data with behavioral information or actions, download, attend, download, subscribe, those kind of action-oriented words that people take, and then context or interests. I'm interested in sports or farming or engineering, more than just that I read, but what did I read and what is my context? It's dynamic, not static. This industry has long had a legacy of point-in-time data, at an end of an audit cycle or on a data refresh, but it's generated in a dynamic manner based on the most current information. And again, it extends well beyond just print and digital. A lot of people say, oh, I've got all my data unified, and we will say, well, your website data, your event registration data, all of that information, it's like, well, it's print and digital, but we don't have all that other stuff. So a true unified audience database in today's world represents all of these individual components across all your property channels into one place. And so it might look like this. A complete picture has conferences and websites and podcasts and e-commerce. You can see the list. You understand the diversity of your products. A unified audience database as an asset that you're looking to monetize has this profile. So when you assess your own internal situation, if this is the asset that you have in a unified place, then you're in business. Okay? An interesting evolution that's going on right now, really where we are on the adoption cycle. Everybody in the industry has come to a standard that we're all in agreement that a company needs a content management system. It's become a core technology. We're all in agreement that for your print publications, we need a technology to help us manage our circulation. We all agree that from a sales perspective, we need a CRM, a core technology to manage our sales operations. we all agree to deliver our editorial content in email. We need an email technology. So the ROI on these tools is less of an assessment as so much they've crossed into just becoming standard tools as a way of doing business. Unified data management platform, a technology that is out there, a data management platform from companies like ours and many others, is really still hasn't broken through in every case as being a mainstream core technology. We believe very firmly, I think most people agree, that whether it's a year from now or two, it will be an industry standard, a technology that you need to run your business. But for now, we're still, as you are on this call, bumping up against what is the ROI for making this investment. A typical technology life cycle really normally has something like this. There's early market visionaries, we're going to talk about them, that go out and say, this is something that we want to do. A period of time goes by where everyone sits back and waits to see if there's results, and then the mainstream jumps into the market. And this is a typical picture. My personal assessment, I have no data on this, it's just me meeting with hundreds of different companies in this industry. I feel like our adoption and deployment within publishing of a unifying database technology is really at a very early stage of getting into the mainstream. There's lots of people that are dabbling in it, doing various different things, but I'm talking about making a solid, consistent, company-wide investment in technology, training, and market readiness is really just getting going. Okay, so again, I have no data, that's my personal assessment, but that's really where I think that we are and why hopefully many of you are on this call looking for reasons to move your business into the mainstream. So some of the leaders, we'll talk a little bit about some examples. A client of ours, like Advanced Star Pharmaceutical, many of you may know Rhonda or other people within that industry that have really made an investment years ago in this sort of technology. They have a product called CAST. It is a unified audience database across all of their pharma brands. They've made hundreds of sales calls. They have material incremental revenue that they've achieved in their business. They've recognized significant cost savings, and they've even expanded this initiative out into their veterinary group. So, Advanced Star is an example of a company that has great tools, great marketing, and has really done a good job in getting out there as a leader. Similarly, you have Watt Global Media out of Chicago. They've been really in the audience intelligence and data marketing business for 3 plus years of an integrated profile. They've achieved significant editorial visibility. They really do a nice job of looking and seeing what kind of editorial content is most appropriate. They, too, have had some operational cost savings within various parts of their business. They're doing extensive data research for their industry, and they're even already moved on beyond the U.S. and are doing data-oriented selling in Europe as well. Scranton Gillette, our friends out in Chicago, are very aggressive on the data side. They're a year and a half into having an asset available to them. Again, similarly, they've cut a lot of costs out of their business, made operational gains in a lot of different areas. They're really moving into an advanced data strategy, really thinking about different ways that they can use data to serve their industry. They're achieving higher rates of audience engagement and product cross-sell, and they're even moving into the world of integration between Drupal and their content management system and data, and how content on the web interacts with data within their database. So those are 3 good examples of what we mean by organizations that are out there, that have been out there as leaders, that have really, charged the hill first, that have begun to establish some of the success stories of how people have been making money. And these guys and others are the success stories that we'll draw on today for ROI. Okay, so let's now get into it. So that's your background, a little bit about UAD. It talks a little bit about some of the success stories. Let's talk now specifically around ROI. We'll kind of get into the meat of it. So a question to ask yourself, if you think about it this way, is what do you think is the value of a company? How do you assess the value of a company that promotes informed decisions through unified data, right? So what's a company or an industry that's running their business, or their value proposition is the value of their data? And one of the greatest examples is Match.com. Match.com could possibly be the greatest unified audience database out there that contains demographic, behavioral, and contextual information for the purposes of bringing people together, okay, which is a lot of what you're supposed to be doing in the publishing arena, and your content and your products are for that purpose. And if you happen to ever look at what Match.com is valued at, recently they were pegged at an estimated value of $5 billion. Again, a unified audience database of dating, behavior, demographic, and profiles all aggregated into one place to allow people to do segmentation and targeting has a $5 billion valuation. Okay? The premise of it is just simply this, that Match is saying instead of dating a lot to find Mr. Right, you can use the information available within their audience data, their unified information, to hone in on the attributes and desired traits, behaviors, demographics of who you want. Okay? So guys, think of that analogy, and remember that is incredibly analogous to the value we are trying to create in publishing for our advertisers, exhibitors, and then on the content side for our readers. Okay? Our industry has a legacy of really sending out lots of things to lots of people for the hope of making a connection. Okay? So what we mean by that in our analogy in our industry is, kind of a blast versus targeting. Typically, campaigns are at the demographic level. Give me all the vice presidents. Give me all the people that are X or in X state or have this demographic data. And that's produced 50,000 names, let's say. However, now we have so much more information, and we know we have the ability to target. So we can add in things like behavioral. Well, now I only want people with all these various other specific behavioral attributes. Who's active? Who has a high lead score? Who's been on our website? Who's attended our events, right? So now we're narrowing down our list, and we can get even more further in there, but we can say, in addition, we want people that have certain pieces of content. They're interested in certain topics. They are, engaged in certain things. They've been on certain ads. Very, very precise, and that list gets narrower and narrower, which is great because intuitively we know that if you're marketing at the bottom level using all the information above, you're more likely to get a better response. Okay? But here's the problem. Our industry has lived on selling CPM. Send me 50,000 names to the VPs. I want to buy as many names as possible. Okay? And you can, let's say, charge $1 per name. Well, if you're going to have all of this additional rich data, you have to monetize it greater. You have to get higher ROI from that user base if you're drilling into it, because if you're only sending something to 2,000 people, you have to find a way to charge significantly more or get significantly higher, greater individual value. Okay, so the precision that we have, the ability to be strategic, the ability to be smart, the ability to sell is what we're driving. Okay? And so these ROI examples are from people that have been able to figure out how this level of detail can help them make money. Okay, so here they are. Let's go. We got them in 3 areas. We'll start with issues. We'll cover ideas on how to do it better, and then we'll show you some outcomes. So when we talk about ideas, here's some things that we've observed of best practices that hopefully you can find and pick and choose and maybe implement on your own, and we'll show you some related outcomes. Okay? Issue number 1 is sales non-competitiveness. Those of you that are sales leaders or salespeople or people that are observational of sales, really we're hearing a lot. We're hearing a lot of concerns and a lot of feedback about publishing and media salespeople being, quote, non-competitive, and here's why. Number 1 is that they're not speaking a digital and data buyers' language. We have turnovers in buyers, new media buyers. We're not speaking their language. Number 2 is they're still selling VPA statements, CPM, and rate cards. It's just a language that's dying in this industry. 3, a reason for non-competitiveness is RFPs that we're receiving from agencies and big media buyers are starting to ask for data. And unfortunately, as point 4 shows, a lot of our responses are slow. So we look like we're not organized. We look like we don't have the information. 5th is of course, order value and close ratios are becoming concerns. If you don't have this information, you're not winning as many deals, and your order value is declining, that's an issue that we're having from a competitiveness. A few people have told us that their confidence surveys that they conduct among salespeople are low. In other words, just a question about how confident do you feel in your ability and our information, etc. It's just a low feeling out there. And lastly, you see that in a growing turnover. A lot of salespeople, especially the good ones, if they feel they're not competitive, they tend to gravitate away from non-competitive companies into competitive industries. So here's what people are doing. 5 different ideas, 5 specific examples of things that you can do to combat this decline in, or maybe the positive side of become more competitive sales lead. First of all is just internal and external awareness and education. You know, a lot of times salespeople are not being helped along. They're not being taught. And your clients are out there and not being educated on the value of data and the value of the asset that you provide. You know, number 2 we talked about as an accompany to that, if you notice the Advanced Stars and Scrantons and Watts of the world, they've developed a brand presence for their data, and they're using their internal marketing and resources to help sales to get a face out there, to help sales understand the value of the data, to understand what information can provide to their clients. The third thing that people are doing, and I would challenge you to do this, is determine what sales tools your people have. You know, your salespeople are your front line. They're going out and making calls. They're standing in front of prospects, and they're being asked to present the value of your company. One of our clients is doing a data-centric pre-call. So instead of just walking in and saying, you know, how's your business doing, they are asking very specific questions on a survey that leads them into data-centric conversations. The fourth idea is having a data in-house expert. So a Rhonda Hughes at Advanced Star, a Jeff Miller at Watt. These are experts that are in-house that assist sales and help them educate so that sales themselves can get through that uncomfortable period when customers' questions come up during their education process. And the last and the fifth idea is making sure that audience data is available for the moment of truth. And the moment of truth from a sales competitive perspective is when a prospect asks you for very targeted information. Do your salespeople have the ability to deliver that to them in the right manner available? So audience data can be available over the web, it can be available in presentations and PDFs in different formats, but making sure that available data is available for them. One example of a client that we had that went through this process, they had an $85,000 client that typically spent money with them across various different channels. But unfortunately, what happened, there was a new buyer that came in, and this probably experienced a lot of you, who opened up a complete new RFP. That $85,000 was not recurring services. It was rebought every year. So when a new buyer came in, they had no legacy. So what happened was this client used all of this information in Dale. They did a bunch of sales research. They worked with their existing internal team. And when they went and responded to the RFP, they tackled several different issues, not only the advertising opportunities, but also some data services areas, some custom media, as well as some research services that they had from their information. So that typical client that spent $85,000 and rebought every year became a $145,000 client that had additional recurring services. So again, being more prepared, being more competitive leads to higher order value. Okay, so number 2 is audience disengagement. So, you know, obviously we're faced with increased competition for readers. You know, ever-changing reader habits are changing from print to mobile to digital to web, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. A lot of that is overblown because people still want content. But the point is that you have to be prepared to deliver it appropriately. You know, lower brand loyalty for non-relevant content. You can't send your customers stuff they don't want anymore just because you want to send it to them. So audiences are disengaging from that content. And you're seeing it in terms of list fatigue because this constant batch and blast mentality is causing declining opens, declining clicks, lower registrations, and lower attendance. A great statement someone had is the mentality that every time an advertiser wants a lead, the only way we go about doing it is blasting our list. Okay, there's so many better ways to do it than just that. So these things combined are causing issues in terms of audience engagement. So here's what people are doing to fix it. Okay, number one, and fortunately, a lot of publishers have gone through this exercise. Number one is to look across your industry and standardize and capture content topics so that we know maybe among 20, 15, 30, some list that these are the content categories that our audience wants. The digital footprint that your readers leave online and in your digital edition products and your PDFs, they're leaving you a footprint of their interest. And by capturing and standardizing that, you have a significant opportunity to improve audience engagement. 2, company-wide input beyond editorial. Unfortunately, a lot of times the only ideas for content for audience engagement come from editorial, but in reality, a lot of other parts of the business have input. And you should ask for sales and marketing, etc. Number 3 is to create and document unique user views and use cases. So again, audience data people are less circulation these days. They're really audience data, and there's ways to look at the data, your unified data, to help improve the way people engage content. 4, commit to a larger number of content products. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the idea to create one-size-fits-all content to grab the highest level of subscriptions is really a way of the past. More products that may have individually a lower subscription number but a higher overall total and better engagement is the way to go about it. And audience engagement shows that if you act that way, you get those statistics. And lastly, some of our clients are hiring in a job called an audience data specialist that resides within the audience development group designed to help proactively mine data for leads. And we could talk more about that later, but the idea that every time you need a lead you have to go to a blast is really being circumvented and gotten ahead of by having someone proactively look at data. So a good example of this is a client that used to send out, or before they kind of went through this process, had a big spam reputation. The answer to everything was to send more. And they went through a significant exercise to determine really what was going on as a result of their content and started sending out very targeted and more specific communications through audience, through their email, through editorial. And they ended up with these kinds of rates. Their sends went down, but so did their unsubscribes. They sent less email, but they had less unsubscribes, and they had a higher open rate and higher conversions. So again, at the end of the day, in a lead program, if it's about conversions, it doesn't always mean send more to get more. Okay, and this protects your audience engagement statistics much better than batch and blast. Okay, number 3 is new product creation. So, you're also responsible for creating new products to make money. And really, as you guys know, there's infinite choices. It's not just I want to launch another print magazine or e-newsletter. You have hundreds and thousands of choices that you can launch products. It costs a lot of money, though, and too many people are missing. They create an event that doesn't get the registration. They create an editorial product that doesn't get the sign-ups. Because a lot of that is being relied on feelings and hunches and opinions on what your readership want. Events are out there as popular, too, from a new product, but if they're done wrong, they're costly and ineffective. And the last one is that's an issue, is there's really a shift, as we said before, from broad content to targeted content. So here's 5 good ideas in this area. First is identify the audience segments and create the products. A lot of people in the past have created the product and then looked for the audience. With data, you should find the audience and then create the product. Okay, that's a better way to do products than the reverse. Okay, so that's just a simple mindset. Are we identifying an audience and then customizing products to that audience? Number 2 is an analytics review of existing product performance. No more should people be relying on, I think this did well, I hope this did well, I believe this did well. You should be looking at content topics from a data perspective that perform well. Number 3 is visibility for an internal scorecard. So, when you have all this data on opens and clicks and topics and reader engagement, are you publishing it to editorial? Are they seeing the information? Is it visible? You want to create products, you need to make your data visible. Number 4 is content creation is marketing automation. It's an idea or a mindset that when you create content, it's part of a series of content that's going to be played out over a period of time so that it's not just editorial, but for people that react a certain way to this piece of content, what are the appropriate additional pieces of content that we should create? Again, similarly from a product standpoint, it's like marketing automation in that there's a sequence to how products are created. And lastly, spin-off products versus new. Every product that you create doesn't have to be completely new. Carl Landau, for those of you who know him in the Grand Poobah and Niche Media, has came up with niche your niche. So even within your own special interest publications, you have smaller niches within that you can create new product that's just a spin-off of something you already have. It doesn't have to be a completely new product to generate interest. One example of a client we had that used to send out one newsletter to one list with 50,000 people, and instead what they decided to do, because they were seeing concerns about it, is they broke it into 3 separate newsletters with 3 separate groups with smaller amounts of content, less articles, and more frequent sends across a diverse group. And they had great rates, much higher open rates, higher lead conversions. They were penetrating. In other words, people were signing up for 2 of the 3 newsletters in some cases, or some cases 3, and because they were dividing it out, they had higher ad revenue. So again, get out of the mindset that every product has to be one big thing. Instead, use data to help you create smaller products. Okay, number 4, operational inefficiency. So we've talked about 3 reasons why people get ROI and 3 examples. Here's another area. Taking out costs in the business. There's limited resources in a lot of clients to support disparate systems. We already named 4 different applications. Maybe this is 5, and many of you have legacies from acquisitions that you need to simply clean out and simplify. There's an overlap in campaigns. A lot of people say, oh, I didn't realize that events sent those people emails. So we're inefficient in how we communicate. We have the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. We also have fear of wholesale change. So a lot of people are reticent to make changes in technology and process for fear out of changing too much. We also see inefficiency through accurate list count. Sales will say, give me this list, and audience or technology will come back and say, call me in a week. That's inefficient. And lastly, with Canadian anti-spam laws, changes in audit bureaus, it's inefficient for us sometimes if we have to constantly be changing based on regulations. So what are people doing in that area? 5 things. Number 1 is making sure that you're always reviewing operational systems and eliminating your redundant systems. Number 2 is open up your technology for bidding. And I don't just mean that's not self-serving for KM. There's a lot of new technologies out there in various different areas that can provide you with good new services and good new ideas. Don't just keep, as number 3 says, avoiding the sunk cost trap. It's a classic trap where we say, well, we've already spent this money. We need to keep going. It's just a bad way to run a business. And a lot of clients are saying, you know what, we're just going to take a fresh look at everything that we do. To be more efficient, you always want to reassess, train, and certify people. And a good mindset that customers sometimes take is a self-audit mentality. Could we self-audit? Could we pass that test? And so here's an example. One of our clients did just that. They went through an exercise and looked at a lot of their third-party costs. And they realized that every time something came up, their first thing was to run to a telemarketer, run to their audit bureaus, run to a data pen service, and they realized instead with 1 million+ records of deduped information that was really powerful, they just said, why don't we handle a lot of these functions ourselves? So they ended up cutting 75% of cost in these areas just simply by looking at their own data to run their business better. Okay? Number 5, singular revenue. So, and I apologize, I already noticed we're going to go a little bit over today. So hopefully you'll hang in there. Number 5 is singular revenue. So when we think about revenue, a lot of publishers have still over-rely on non-recurring ad revenue. In other words, well, I'm waiting for my next insertion order, I'm waiting for my next ad. And we all know the dollars, dollars, dimes, pennies, which is print is dollars, digital is dimes, mobile is pennies. And so if we can't monetize this and find different ways, we're going to run into issues if we only have ads as a singular source. It's hard to start every year at 0. If everything you sell has to be rebought on January 1, it really makes for a tough year. Okay? And so to the extent that you can launch marketing services and some of these things that are out there, it allows you to have potentially more of a recurring model so that you're not starting every year at 0. And lastly, there's an opportunity out there as your clients, you may have heard, the brands that you sell to are trying to get into content marketing. So that's potentially a risk for your ads and from your services if they're getting into the space that you're in. Okay? So here's some ideas that people are taken under to diversify revenue. Number one is a direct link between audience data and custom media. So custom media, as a great product, in many cases very profitable, whether that's services or content design or campaign development, often is being linked directly to the ability for your data to show you what those custom media products, whether it's a custom print product or a custom data management service or what have you. Data and custom media are a good partner together. We talked a little bit about this before. A good way to sell more marketing services is to have somebody focused on it. They tend to assign a quota, they tend to service revenue, they're giving a direct contribution for data revenue and data money, not just as an offshoot. Number three is a good mindset. We have people that are thinking data licensing, not list rental. You know, list rental is a good business. People make a lot of money on it, but it still is a mindset of a one-time use as opposed to data licensing mindset, which is perpetual use. The ability to continue to receive revenue from your audience, not just something that happens on a rental basis. Four is content marketing. There's an opportunity to help your brands get into the content marketing business. You know, one of our clients had a great statement. He said, I'm tired of fighting our brands that want to get into content marketing. I'm going to join them. I'm going to help them by leveraging the resources that you as a publisher have, both on the content and the audience side. It's a way to get additional revenue to help your publisher, or excuse me, your brands that may want to get direct access to your audience through their own branding exercises. You can help them, quote, get into that content marketing. And lastly, another way of thinking about it is when you're out selling and when you're representing your business, are you leading with data and services that are supported by products, or are you leading with products that are supported by data and services? If I walk out and say, I've got 4 magazines, and they're like, great, and you say, and I've got great data underneath that, what clients are doing is reversing that and saying, we've got an incredible amount of data in our business about the audience you desire. Are you interested? And by the way, we've got tons of products to get your message out. Okay, so think of the mindset of reversing the way you present your business. It's not always products, then data. It's data, then products. Okay, and a great example of that, again, another client that had an ad revenue only client of $37,000 a year. Again, as often the case, there's turnover at the buyer level, an opportunity for the publisher to represent themselves to a new buyer that is opening up the contracts for bid, and they got into a situation where they won a deal that ended up being over $130,000 and a very comprehensive proposal that includes data and services, not just ads. So again, if you imagine that conversation changing, you can understand how data at the forefront can produce a higher revenue value of services and a more diverse set of revenue for among your clients. Number 6, where we need help for ROI, is product fatigue. You know, I think most people agree, and a lot of our clients, especially those that are in B2B in niche, are not, fortunately, they're seeing in many cases a rise in interest because general issue content is waning. You know, people are less interested in sifting through tons of data to find, or tons of articles and content. They really want to hone in on something that they know is specific. You know, so you're seeing lower engagement statistics in general content and potentially higher engagement statistics in special interest publications, special interest products. You know, legacy events that are doing the same old every year, the same sessions with the same speakers, are seeing a precipitous decline in how many people are attending, and also starting to see where exhibitors aren't automatically saying, I want to renew my spot. Okay, so product fatigue, and just again, product is not just articles. Products are your events, products are your e-newsletters, products are your websites. Those are all your products, and people are fatiguing. There's a high cost of new product creation, so you got to be careful to not mess up. And lastly, many of our clients, especially in aging verticals, let's say farming or some others, need an influx of young readers. The draw you had of being the destination print magazine isn't there, and even though you have product content, you have to find new influx of readers. Okay, so one of the things to remember is we talked a little bit before about ways to create new products, but don't forget, your existing products are probably pretty good. Maybe they just need a fresh coat of paint, and data can help you do that. So number one, here's an idea, and the visual is, when you look at your current clients today, pick your number one advertiser, and you look at all of your various different products and services. One of our clients went through the exercise of just creating a matrix. Think of all the services down one side, the top 20 clients perhaps down the other, and just put X's to see where have you penetrated those clients. And you might find some huge gaps and say, you know what, we can energize some of our existing products from an advertiser perspective just simply by talking and understanding where our gaps are. Similarly, on the reader side, you could do the same exercise and say, how many of our readers are engaged in multiple products across channels? You may be trying to drive event registrants, and you're banging your head against the wall trying to drive up registration for a legacy product. You should be looking at how other people are engaging similar products within your audience. So this relevancy and assessment grid has been an excellent way for people to increase the performance of legacy products. 3, demographic behavior. We talked about that. Make sure that when you're doing marketing for events or you're adding marketing for existing products that you're not just looking at titles and names. You're also looking at recency of open, product interest, content interest. Again, number 4, multi-part customized marketing. Don't let your old products die so quickly. You know, people are dismissing things like print, and it's really wrong. A lot of clients are still having a lot of success by refreshing them, by attracting a new audience among people that are consuming similar content in other channels. You know, they're just letting them go, unfortunately. Maybe it's because they don't have the data, but there's significant opportunity for you guys to work in that area on your legacy products. And lastly, another good idea, and we'll talk about this here second, is on events. Everybody wants to know about events because that's all the rage. Well, make sure that when you're doing events and you're creating your events and doing your event marketing, like we talked about last month, you're using data. If you know that there's 1,000 people interested in topics about how to grow tomatoes, and you're going to have a session at your next live event about that specific technique, make sure that when you're doing your event marketing, you're giving special messages to those people that have already expressed interest in that content. You know, so these events and editorial and data all need to work hand in hand. So we had a client that had a legacy event that was really in decline, and they went through a very comprehensive exercise. It was an 8-year-old event. They went through a very comprehensive exercise to look at attendance, past attendance, relevant topics, who advertised, who didn't, sponsorship, and all that. And they went through very data segmentation. They did a multi-part campaign, and they ended up increasing the attendees, which was a paid event, by 21%, and they grew their sponsorship revenue by 15%. So again, it can be very material if you guys use your data to not let old products die, okay? And lastly, organizational valuation. Those of you that think about the value of your company, or you as an individual, the value of your role at the company, here's a couple things that are going on. The multiples that ad-centric publishers are getting when they go to sell their business are declining. You know, Newsweek sold for $1. You know, and even some, if an investment capital firm or an organization looks at your business and sees non-recurring ad revenue, the value of that company is significantly lower, in this case, than the multiple to EBITDA that you would get for an events business or a data intelligence business. If you look at some of the more recent acquisitions, you see a higher capitalization and payment for companies that present themselves as events and data intelligence versus I'm an ad business or I'm an advertiser or a pure magazine or a pure newspaper. You know, you have to remember, too, that new competitors like LinkedIn on the content side have massive market capitalizations as data companies. And if you can't figure out a way to increase your own valuation, the amount of money available to you will change. Okay, so similarly, investment capital is out there everywhere you read for data-oriented businesses. So you need to get your business in that position. So here's 5 things that you can think about from that perspective. Number 1, think of the value of the company as the value of your data. The more of it you have, the cleaner it is, the greater the value. We talked about Match.com. sloppy data is sloppy operations. If you don't know what's going on in your business, you don't know how many people you have, you don't know your audience behavior, and I'm assessing your business, I don't think you understand how you're running your business. Okay, so the cleanliness and the tightness of your information and it equals the tightness of your operations. Number 3 is, again, we talked about this before, make sure that when your salespeople are going out and talking about your company, they're talking about you as a data and information services company or an events company, not just a print product company or even an digital products company. Perception is everything, as you guys know, in a lot of areas, and really getting out with a message of who you are is critical to get alignment. Similarly, number 4, a lot of home pages I look at for publishers and media companies, they present themselves as a collection of products, of magazines. They don't present themselves as data or intelligence or audience information or insight. And there's valuation there. You could change your homepage and your About Us descriptions on your corporate pages to make you present yourself as a business, again, for higher valuation and perception of what you have. And lastly, sometimes we have clients that are starting to emphasize and reward their salespeople for recurring contracts. Again, you want more recurring contracts, reward the salespeople for doing it. Again, that drives higher organizational value. One of our customers that sold their business went through this process. They were getting ready to put their company up for sale and went through a very extensive exercise. A lot of these things they had put in place, but they went through a very aggressive data cleansing process, and they ended up with a unified database that had a ton of intelligence. They took screenshots and Venn diagrams and captures, and they put it in their investor kit for how they use that data to do their investor pitch. And the quote that we received was that they felt they get a 50% higher multiple to EBITDA just because they presented themselves as more of an information and events business as they did if they were a publisher or a media company. So again, guys, those are 7 areas. The summary of this is that this audience data is a 3-legged tool, demographic, behavioral, contextual. Audience-first selling is coming into mainstream. There are ROI successes across many aspects of a publisher's operations, and that great data equals high valuations. Those 7 areas and the very 5 tips in each are things that many of you can implement. And if you can't implement them today, you should at least start thinking about them as how you approach your operations and how you sell and manage your business. We'll get a couple questions, but there is an accompanying white paper to this that has all of these examples and details exploded out into more detail. You're more than welcome to go out on our website and download it. You can get copies of this. It has a lot more information. It goes into these case studies in a lot more detail. It's literally, kind of an accompaniment free to you as an expansion from today's event. A couple of questions that came up were really around expectations of timing. We had a slide that we took out just a little bit about phases. An implementation or conversion and org readiness for these types of project ranges from a couple of months, 2 to 4 months, to maybe 4 to 6 months. And really a lot of these things start kicking in very shortly after you're kind of live to market. It doesn't take a ton of time to start seeing success. Full optimization, you saw some clients that have been live for 3-4 years that are really, really integrated data within how they run their business. They're really the high-value future leaders of this industry because they've made this a standard in terms of data at the forefront of how they run their business. But really, I think many clients, depending on their level of pain and depending on their level of opportunity, certainly would expect a payback in many areas within a year or shortly thereafter. The other question that I had that I'll do quickly and then wrap up was just related to sales. What's the prognosis long term for sales? I mean, I think the net of it is that the 80-20 rule is going to be even more prevalent than ever. It seems that a lot of companies are saying 20% of our salespeople get it, 20% will never get it, and it's the 60% in the middle that we really want to manage up. I think that that's applicable here. There's a lot of opportunities. As a sales professional myself, I see data opportunities for salespeople here that are extraordinary. I wish I had this data. I wish we had the ability in all cases to go in this educated about our audience behavior. So I think it's bullish for sales, but I definitely think, as many of our publishers have stated, that there's going to continue to be turnover. You need a fresh group of people in many businesses to get the word out. So again, there were a couple other questions. I'll answer them separately, but thank you everybody for attending. Sorry to go a little bit long. There was extra content here. Again, you'll get a copy if you're interested in a re-recording of today, as well as the opportunity to download the e-brief for further reading. Thanks everybody for attending. We'll see you all again next month. Take care.